Hello, divine creation. That's you. I'm talking to you, you divine creation. And that includes me. As I say that, I'm pointing at the screen that has a picture of me, like, hey there, you divine creation. Oh, how we human beings forget that according to the Bible, we're made in the image and likeness of God. How often do we remind ourselves of that each day? How often do I remind myself? Well, at least once a day. At least once a day, I remind myself of these gatherings. But what would it be like if every time we walked by a mirror, instead of looking at the physical stuff, we looked deep, we turned to the mirror and looked deep into our eyes and said, hello, divine creation, divine marvel. That, meaning us. Hello, that which is made in the image and likeness of God. And we respected the divinity inside of ourselves. Let's try it out. I'm going to try it out today, or I'm going to try it out. I'm intending to try it out. We'll see what happens. Um, it's written that Christ called his message the gospel, which means good news. I mean, he didn't call it gospel. I mean, that's sort of an old English word, but he called it the good news. And that sounds like some pretty good news to me, that inside each one of us is something utterly sacred, utterly divine. And again, as it's written in the Bible, that we're made in the image and likeness of God. Sadly, modern Christianity, and by modern I mean everything from about 400 years after the death of Christ onwards, has emphasized not so much that we're a divine creation, but that we are a miserable sinner. And as I've shared, I'm starting to research early Christianity. And there's one church today that maintains the emphasis not on the fact that, not the image of us as sinners, but the image of us as a divine creation made in the image and likeness of God. And that's the Eastern Orthodox Church, the oldest standing Christian church, and their emphasis is very much on the fact that we have within us something divine, and that we're on this journey that they call theosis, the process of becoming more like God, that it's a sacred sort of a spiritually evolutionary journey. It's a very different view of the human being than to view us humans as miserable sinners or animals. So let's practice this. I'm gonna try to practice it more, and I invite all of you to try and practice it more if you feel inspired. Let me put it that way. Bruno Groening certainly invited us, suggested that it would be a good idea, and here's what he said. If I can find that quote of his. Yes, I can. That'll take me a minute. I'll find it and share it later. So, welcome to everyone who's joining in live and everyone who's watching the recording of this. And actually, I'm just going to paraphrase. Sometimes I get too hung up on trying to get the exact words. Bruno Groening said, let us recognize the divine in other people. And that way, through loving and seeing, I'm paraphrasing here, through loving and seeing the divinity in other people, we can really come into communion with God. That means is if we take this teaching to heart, every person we see can remind us of God. Sounds like a good way to live. I'm going to work on it. I hope all of you work on it, and I hope all of you remind me to strive to live this way. Because we have this bad habit of saying, well, only that guy, only Jesus is divine, whereas I'm utterly convinced that he came to remind us that we're all divine, that we all have God, just in some mysterious way, that God lives in all of us, or that there's something completely sacred, completely holy inside all of us. How to get in contact with it? Well, Bruno Groening reminded us very simply of this practice of tuning in. So let's do it now. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. If you can, not leaning against your chair, back in an upright position, and close your eyes. Handing over everything not good, fear, worry, disease, life situations you feel stressed about. Handing them over to your understanding of a higher power. I suggest to a spiritual helper that you trust. If you don't have one, then hand it over to God. Everything we're worried about. And having done that, now focus your entire attention on your healing. That healing is happening, healing will happen, and ask to receive the divine energy, the living waters, Christ called it. The Heilstrom, Bruno Groening called it. And observe your body, noticing what you feel, taking in this divine energy, trusting that every sensation is a step towards your recovery. It's written that Christ said, "Whoever drinks of these waters shall never become thirsty." And in this moment, I think I understand what he meant, if that's what he said. When I tune in, I feel so complete. As someone said the other day, I think it was Forever Loving Everything, said that she felt at home. I feel very complete and whole. And that's one of the meanings of Heil, actually. The German word Heil means whole, intact, sound, uninjured, unharmed, as if lifted above all the troubles of life, as if the past had been at least temporarily wiped away. It's a very profound word. Anyone who's serious about this path, I hope. Well, it's funny, all the suggestions I offer, it's like, well, I need to do that too. I would like to spend more time, not need to, but I would like to spend more time meditating on that word because it also means healing. It also means divine. It also means salvation. I personally think healing doesn't really capture the meaning of that word without the other connotations. Because Bruno didn't really come to heal people, not at least in the way we think of it. Like someone has, let's say someone is deaf. Bruno didn't come to restore that person's hearing. Bruno came to remove the evil that causes all of our problems. And how wonderful and not just for Bruno to remove it, but to teach us how to remove that evil and how to stop taking the evil in. And how nice is it when, in the process of learning how to stop taking evil in and to take in the good, and in the process of freeing ourselves with evil, a physical healing happens. How wonderful is that? Yet Bruno Groening himself said that physical healings were only 10% of his work. So many people come to Bruno Groening seeking physical healing. I did, and I still do. There's still some things that I'm hoping for a little help with. I experienced many, many healings, but what I've come to realize is that healing in the spiritual sense of the word really has nothing to do with the body. That when an illness vanishes, that's just a side effect of the evil being removed. I like to come up with metaphors or analogies. Let's say, for example, someone has a splinter in their foot, a tiny splinter that's, they say, I'm just making this up on the fly, so bear with me, please, or don't. Um, so let's say someone has a splinter in their foot and it's like pinching a nerve. And so then they start to get pain up the back of their leg and then pain in their knee. And so they go and they try all these things and they get physical therapy and then the knee gets better, but then they have to keep doing the physical therapy because they haven't found the cause. And then at some point, a doctor is like, well, let's check out your feet. And they find this splinter and they just pull the splinter out. And then suddenly, like, the knee is healed and the chronic tension in the leg vanishes and the person doesn't limp anymore. Is that a healing? Well, not in the modern sense of the word. In the modern sense of the word, healing means just, an illness goes. What Bruno meant by healing is you remove the cause and then the body just comes back into divine order. So in my analogy, and okay, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Let's say someone has a pinched vertebrae in their lower back, and that's sending pain down their leg and into their knee, but they don't get the proper diagnosis. So they spend all this time doing yoga on their leg and doing physical therapy on their leg, and then they get an accurate diagnosis and they get a chiropractic adjustment and all the problems just disappear. Now, does that mean there's anything wrong with seeking just the physical healing. Someone's like, "Hey, I just want the pain in my knee gone. I just want my leg to work right." No, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the full spectrum. I heard this amazing story of a woman who she was actually a doctor. She was on 5 pain medications, and she walked, like, scrunched over, leaned over on 2, walking sticks, and she was in just absolute pain. And she found about Bruno Groening, and um, within a very short time, she was off the pain medication. She didn't need the sticks, and she was actually able to do a cartwheel. Now, this was a doctor, someone who knew all her medical options, and the best she could do was pain meds, and so be it. And then she was able to be free from this she was freed from this illness in a very short time. And then she just kind of left the teaching and drifted away and did her own thing. Is that bad? No, I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just trying to give a complete picture of what Bruno Groening taught. So if you're here just for physical illness and you're like, I don't care about the spiritual teaching stuff, I don't, it's like, I just want my knee better. You're very welcome here. And that can and does happen in gatherings like this and in practicing tuning in on your own. So if that's all you're interested in, that's all I was interested in. It took me many, many years to really be interested in more. And so be it. I'm not wanting to pass judgment by any means. If you're like, I just want my knee better, then come hang out. And if, if it's God's will, then it will happen. Occasionally, it's God's will that we have a particular burden for our whole life. And it's not my job to say what is and isn't God's will, just to point out that God's ultimate will for us is happiness. And sometimes things are set up in life. Situations happen, including illnesses, for our learning. That's why Bruno Groening said, don't demand a healing, attain it. So let's reflect on all this while we continue to take in this good energy. Handing over any burdens, and then also coming into a place of trust. Having faith as we take this energy in. It's so important to remind ourselves in two things, in the almighty power that we're taking in, and also that this almighty power is in charge. It's not my job to determine when a healing happens. It's my job to strive for the good. The results are up to God. I'm so grateful to each one of you who comes to these. Not only am I convinced that, um, the more of us that are doing this together, even though our together is now currently around the world, the stronger a field we create. So we're doing this profound service to right now, there's 9 of us live here. So that's my view. I don't know that Bruno ever said that, but it just seems logical to me. And then there's this other piece of doing this great service to the earth, of inviting this energy in and literally cleaning up. When I do this, I try to be clear that I'm cleaning up my own body, which is part of the earth. So thank you. And then on top of that, me getting an opportunity to share these teachings just deepens and deepens and deepens my faith and my trust and my understanding. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Drawing in the divine energy, being willing to let go of what's not good. Noticing what you feel, receiving, intending to take this energy in. I'd like to thank everyone for joining in. Thanks for saying hi, forever loving everything. Hey, Alex. Welcome, Jisoo. All right, dear ones, I wish you a day full of this divine power and being guided by it. There's a great conductor. Bruno Groening called it God. Whatever you want to call it, there is a something that can help and heal with everything and that can guide us in everything. It's just our job to seek it. Thanks so much for joining in. Take care. Much love.